One nation opposes the Queensland Olympic bid. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, I'm Florian Heise, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I've got my faithful stein of coffee in hand, and I thought we would have a look at this article discussing one nation's opposition to the 2032 Queensland Olympic bid. I'm starting to feel more and more that the minor parties are a voice of reason and something that can counter the narrative of the big two. So when you're voting, remember, with our preferential system, you can vote smart. You can help shift the window and vote strategically. A vote for a minor isn't a waste. Even if they've got no chance of winning in your seat, if they get enough votes, they can still get funding. Who would you rather give the money to? One of the majors? Nonetheless, let's have a look at this article. So we can't even afford water. Pauline Hanson's fight against Queensland's bid to host the 2032 Olympics, because it'll waste billions and won't help drought-stricken areas. Queensland government is supporting a bid for the Olympics in 2032. One Nation Senator Pauline Hanson says it would waste billions of dollars. She wants to see more money spent on water infrastructure in regional areas. Senator Malcolm Roberts told Daily Mail why Queensland should not host the Games. Well, she makes a good point. We need to invest in water infrastructure here. If people are concerned that these bushfires are brought on by climate change, why haven't they been advocating for preparation for reduced rainfall so we can capture and store what we have more efficiently? I don't understand. I did a video in the past looking at just our water infrastructure growth compared to our population growth. It's a little depressing. Our population's increased by about a quarter. Our water infrastructure increased by just over 1%. And this is for potable water stored in dams. Because they're building new dams, but a lot of them are out of the mines, and they're not for drinking. And you don't want to be dependent on desalination in Australia when we don't have to. So Pauline Hanson's explained why she's fighting against Queensland's bid to host the 2032 Olympics. The One Nation Senator, 65, believes it would be a waste of money, which could be better spent on water infrastructure to alleviate drought in regional areas. The bid for the 2032 Games is supported by Queensland's Labor Party and Liberal National Party in the belief that it will attract tourists and boost the economy. Okay, so just remember that, because I've got a few other things we'll go through today to maybe cast some doubt onto these two assumptions. It seems to be the same old fallacy again and again with these bloody Olympics. So, but in a fired-up appearance on the Today Show, well, that's what Hanson's like. Senator Hanson said we can't afford it because we can't even afford water for Queensland. The cost of the Olympics is unknown, but Senator Hanson says it will be at least $8.9 billion. Can we afford it? No, we can't, she said, from Mount Isa. So, how many of you, they've got a poll here. Let's do our own little poll in the comments below. How many of you would support this bid for the Olympics here in Queensland in 2032? I'm not in favour of it, to be honest. I think it's going to be a gargantuan waste of money and resources. And even all these, putting together the proposal is a waste. I've got townships such as Stanthorpe with no water. Now you can't tell me that we can afford to put on the Olympics. This month the Queensland government announced it will pay $800,000 a month to truck water into the Southern Downs, where reserves are below 10%. Senator Hanson said she has called for greater investment in water infrastructure, such as the Bradfield scheme, a plan to shift water from the east to drought-stricken areas inland, but said the government won't even do a feasibility test. There's a lot of people who are advocating for the Bradfield scheme, and it may not be 100% the best scheme, but she's right. What would you rather? A feasibility, or putting all the money to make a bid for the Olympics, or a feasibility study on different water infrastructure projects here in Australia, or here in Queensland? I know what I'd vote for. Apart from water, she also said the money could be better spent on healthcare, schools and roads. Well, I suggest it could be better spent with tax deductions or reductions, or maybe even some of the state costs that we all have. Maybe those license fees or those vehicle registration fees that we have could be reduced. Queensland state debt is projected to hit $90.72 billion by 2022-23, and Senator Hanson says that the Olympics would only increase it. The Olympic event would be held in Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast, the Gold Coast, and Senator Hanson said it would not benefit regional areas. A poll by Queensland newspaper The Courier Mail found that 36% of LNP voters and 24% of Labor voters were against the bid. So there you go. I'm in there. Look at the low water levels near Stanthorpe. Today host Carl Stefanovic asked Senator Hanson if she was opposing the Olympics to win votes ahead of the state election in October. She replied, "Carl, don't you think I've always been straight up with the people regardless of whether there's votes in it?" We could argue that that's her personality. I mean, she has always been straight up. Some people love her, some people hate her. She replied, and I'm repeating that, "Earlier this month, Senator Hanson wrote to Prime Minister Scott Morrison to urge him to remove the federal government's support for the bid." She wrote, "Australia's economy is still sluggish and the economy of Queensland is at its worst position in history, so it is irresponsible to commit unknown funds, but probably in the billions, to a project like this. The decision to chase the Olympics despite having no firm idea about the costs, while there are many other worthwhile needs in this nation, could be regarded as irresponsible and misdirected leadership." One Nation's other senator, Malcolm Roberts, also supports the fight against holding the Olympics. He told the Daily Mail Australia, "What Queensland needs more than ever is investment in productive infrastructure, not debt-ridden, feel-good, one-off sports parties." Yeah, the more I hear about Malcolm, the more I like him. Regional Queenslanders look around their communities and see poor health services, decreasing education outcomes for their children, a lack of water infrastructure, and an inner-city-centric government who only cares about its image. And there we go. I mean, so, what do you think, guys? What do you think? Let's have a look at another example. Let's look at Rio. And we'll look here. This is an article. It's a couple years old, but I think it's very relevant here. Very relevant. So, arenas in Rio falling apart after the Olympic Games. Only 6 months after the 2016 Summer Olympics, some arenas are desolate. The excitement of South America's first Olympics and Paralympic Games was pulsing through the bustling areas in Rio de Janeiro last August. And at the time this was written, this was 2016. But almost 6 months after the close of the Summer 2016 Olympics, many venues are abandoned and desolate. Rio's Olympic organisers are unsure how they will repay the $40 million they owe to creditors for setting up the Olympic facilities, according to the Associated Press. I mean, there you go. Is that productive infrastructure? And remember, even just bidding for the games, that's going to take a whole team. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's all tax resources. So, the Maracana Stadium, one of the iconic venues for Rio, has fallen into disrepair due to vandalism and lacking funds for upkeep and electricity, the AP reported. And the second largest cluster of Olympic venues, Didora, is closed until they are taken over by a new management company. The sweeping Olympic golf course has also been neglected. The Olympic Games, as currently conducted, are not economically viable for most cities. A 2016 study on the economics of the Olympic Games by the American Economic Association said, the most important reason includes infrastructure costs relating to the venues hosting the events, the monopoly rents that flow to the International Olympic Committee, poor management, corruption, and the spectre of unreasonable and unrealizable economic expectations for the host city and nation. As the Rio Games were beginning last summer, Andrew Zimbalzit, a Smith College professor of economics, told ABC News that the Games were projected to cost Brazil $20 billion and return only $4 to $4.5 billion. Okay, so keep that in mind. Because let's look at an example. Oh, I've got to zoom out a little bit there. There we go. Let's look at an example closer to home. And this is from the Commonwealth Games down on the Gold Coast that we just had recently. Now, I went down the Commonwealth Games. One of my friends, we went to see the weightlifting, and it was really good. Actually, I really enjoyed it. But there were no queues. There was hardly anyone there. Buying a drink, it was bloody expensive to buy some Forex, that's for sure, but that's like any sports event, you just cop it. But there was hardly anyone there. And the roads, they warned us so often about so much traffic. That was back when I was doing some Ubering. And I thought I'd go down there to make some money doing Uber, and I'd given up on Uber by then. But there was no one there. There was no one there. Everyone avoided the Gold Coast. Everyone left the city because of it. So, and remember, it was only a couple of years ago. 2018. So Gold Coast, Australia. A few minutes walk from the Commonwealth Games basketball venue, a deflated armadillo casino surveys empty tables and idle wait staff at La Roma restaurant, waiting for a promised business dividend that has stubbornly refused to come. I mean, here you go. I remember this. It was just dead. For 12 years, the Nepalese-born Gold Coast resident has paid steep rent for his coveted corner space in the usually bustling entertainment precinct of Broadbeach, but he cannot remember business ever being so bad. Compared to the usual, we're down about 60 to 70% in revenues, he told Reuters, of his takings during the games period. This is the thing. It was a complete disaster. It was a complete disaster. Why isn't anyone bringing that up? How terrible these Commonwealth Games were. How little money it brought to the state. And people are saying, oh, maybe they're going to reuse the infrastructure flooring they built for the Com Games. It's going to be 10 years old. It'll be a decade old by the time the Olympics comes around. For the last 3 months, we have a big problem. We've got to pay lots of bills. We didn't expect it to be like this. A survey of his neighbours revealed similar struggles across the length of the retail strip, where high-rise holiday accommodations usually produce a steady stream of tourists to pack out the local cafes and restaurants. Gold Coast organisers claim to have sold more than 96% of the $1.2 million tickets and forecast that 670 visitors would descend on the balmy resorts in southern Queensland during the April 4 to 15 games. Crowds have been impressive at the sports venues, with a number of events sold out, but local businesses have been stunned by the lack of foot traffic and commerce. I guess maybe I just went to an event that wasn't sold out. Hotels that raised their rates in expectation of a windfall have hastily cut them, and many have less than half their usual occupancy, said one Broadbeach hotelier who declined to be named. David Benedict, the boss of a nearby local cafe, reported that 18 retail businesses in the immediate neighbourhood had failed in the months leading up to the quadrennial events as traffic and parking restrictions began to bite. Oh, the restrictions they put on traffic were just ludicrous. They were just ludicrous what they were doing. Business owners lay the blame squarely on the feet of the Gold Coast Organising Committee, Gold Doc, which urged local residents to avoid driving in the sprawling city of 560,000 that has long been the slave to the automobile. The local government's scare campaign, and yes, it was a scare campaign, it really was, and the decision to stage the games during school holidays had turned away locals and tourists alike, said Roger Laganin, general manager of the Phoenician Resort, a hotel at Broadbeach. It's been a complete disaster, he said. They've scared everyone away. It's caused a lot of grief for people around here. During the opening weeks of the Games, Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate was forced into a hasty apology after telling disgruntled local businesses to get out there and market. Oh, shit. Oh, wow. I mean, this is the thing with politicians. They're isolated from reality. I'm sorry my support for business has been misinterpreted, Tate said in a statement published by local media. I respect that businesses have done a lot to be Games ready. Further down the coast in Coolangatta, spectators packed out the 4,000-seat beach volleyball venue throughout the week-long tournament. Yet the nearby shopping centre was so quiet at times you could fire a bullet and no one would notice. Well, yeah, you go there to the sports event. You may buy one or two things, maybe go out for dinner, but you're not going to go shopping, are you? And it's the Commonwealth Games, guys. It's not the Olympics. So, Bruce Elder, an Uber driver from nearby suburb of Currumbin Waters. So I was glad I'd given up Uber by this stage, because I remember I did it over like that Christmas period. We went down there. I stayed at my mother's and I was just driving around, and it was good for a week. And New Year's you can make a couple of grand, but Gold Coast is a lot easier than Brisbane actually doing Uber. But I'm after some of the experiences I've had there, I'm over it. So they were saying it would be mayhem with traffic jams causing 4-hour trips from Brisbane rather than the usual 1.5 hours. It's not happened anywhere near like this because everyone's just left town for the Games. back at La Roma restaurant in Broadbeach, Cozzolino said he had no intention of seeing any events at the games. I was not out of protest or any will towards them. Nope, I've got to work. I've got to pay my bills, he said. So here we have a very recent, very local example of where it's all failed. Because people have petitioned. And here we have a Queensland Parliament petition to delay the Olympic bid. Okay? And this is for all Queensland citizens. It was published on the 26th of the 9th, 2019, and closed on the 24th of the 11th. And here's what they were saying. To the Honourable, the Speaker and members of the Legislative Assembly of Queensland. Queensland citizens draw to the attention of the House that there is strong communal disapproval with Queensland seeking an Olympic bid for 2032. Queenslanders are concerned with the extraordinary cost associated with hosting an Olympic Games, the fact that host cities never make back as much money from the event as they spend, the special protections awarded to Olympic sponsors at the exclusion of local businesses, and the disruption to normal civic life. That's an interesting thing. Because when I was at the Commonwealth Games and I went to the toilet, we had the dryers there that were the Dyson dryers. And they'd had to put tape over the Dyson name, over every single one in the venue I was at, because they weren't sponsors. So I proceeded to take them off, just to be a bastard, but I thought that was quite unusual. So Queenslanders believe that this money could be better spent dealing with immediate challenges facing Queensland, such as the economy, drought, and vital infrastructure and services. Your petitioners therefore request the House to resolve that no further government monies be spent seeking an Olympic bid until such time as the critical policy concerns, namely relating to stabilising current industries, boosting the state's economy, and correcting concerning unemployment issues, are properly addressed. And it received 1,279 signatures. And they received a response. And let's have a look at the Premier's response here. So, Premier of Queensland, Minister for Trade. Dear Mr. Laurie, thank you for your letter of the 29th of November 2019 enclosing petitions 3209-19, which was tabled in the Parliament on the 26th of November 2019. The Queensland Government has a firm eye on the future of the entire state. Really? Does it feel like it? And the prospect of hosting the world's greatest event presents a tremendous opportunity for Queensland. A detailed value proposition assessment has shown that a Queensland-based Olympic and Paralympic Games, the Games in 2032, could deliver significant economic and community benefits to the state, such as supporting, not creating, supporting 130,000 jobs, accelerating the development of our infrastructure. Why do you need the Games for that? And what infrastructure would it be? Boosting international tourism by more than 20 billion. Well, that didn't happen in the Commonwealth Games, did it? You completely failed there. Delivering up to 8.6 billion in new trade opportunities. Up to, perhaps, where's the evidence of that? Really worked for Rio, didn't it? Delivering procurement and supply chain opportunities for businesses throughout the state. It's funny how they mention that, because there's another video I have planned where Queensland the government isn't even procuring milk from local suppliers. So, this is nice talk, but that all goes out the window. The International Olympic Committee's new rules, known as New Norm, give us greater support to deliver the Games in a cost-effective way while still putting athletes at the centre of the events. But there is still a lot more work to be done before we proceed with the proposal to the International Olympic Committee. The state will only proceed if it is in the best interest of Queenslanders and if all levels of government get behind the state's efforts and provide appropriate financial support. So there you go. So Pauline calling on the Prime Minister to remove support. That's a good idea. We're continuing to work with all three levels of government to ensure appropriate funding is in place and that the Queensland community will be enduring beneficiaries to any Games proposals. Okay, Anastasia. So there you go. Pretty much a fob-off response to that. Just look at the Gold Coast outcome, everyone. Look at the Rio outcome, everyone. Can you see it making this difference here in Queensland? Would you support this Games? Or do you think One Nation are on the right track and that'll win them more support regardless? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Brisbane should go for it? Do you think they shouldn't? Did you actually go to the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast? What was your experience there? Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to help us produce more content, I have a Patreon where you can make a small monthly donation. You can also join the channel here on YouTube, receive badges, and get access to emojis. We have also affiliate links for Independent Reserve for the crypto traders, and Amazon and eBay for anyone making commercial consumer purchases. We receive a small share of the fee that the advertiser or seller is charged. Doesn't cost you a cent, and it's a great way for you to support content creators. And finally, we have pocket squares on the HeiseSays website, handmade, and PayPal if you want to support us that way. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and I will see you all later. Bye for now.